Hi everybody, welcome back. My name's Alice, I'm the online piano and the online violin tutor. Today I'm going to talk about a common problem in vibrato, and that is that the violin shakes, and a lot of you can't work out why it shakes or how to solve those problems. So I'm going to give you 4 potential reasons why the violin might be shaking, and I'm going to give you 4 solutions as well that might help you to overcome the shaking. So before I just go any further, I just want to kind of just mention that these are my own thoughts and opinions. These are collated from my many years of teaching. Some of you might have heard something different, something similar. Your teacher might have told you something in a completely different way. That's absolutely fine. Everybody's individual. Everybody teaches in a slightly different way. The goal is exactly the same. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that before anybody kind of went in and maybe contradicted what I was saying. So, going straight into it, the first reason why you might get shaking in the violin is because the index finger or your hand might be touching the violin at the time of doing the vibrato. So when I do vibrato, my thumb is touching the neck of the violin. It's either round the side or underneath. And when I do vibrato, I don't have anything touching the violin at all. So it is literally like this, so you can't see any fingers or any other digits touching the violin when I'm doing vibrato. It's all completely free. Some of you might have your fingers, like for example this part of your index finger here, touching the neck of the violin, and then you're trying to do vibrato. It's not going to work. It's going to be really hard. This is me doing vibrato. So I'm not actually touching anything there. If I'm actually touching with this part of my index finger here, the lower part, just this part here, if I'm actually touching that and then I try to do some first finger vibrato, I can't actually do that same movement. If I do the second finger, I can't actually do that, and because of that it's causing my hand to grip down even further or grip down even more, and it's causing a lot of grip around this area here. So some of you may touch the neck of the violin with other parts of your hand and you might have some successful vibrato, and that's fine. But for those of you who might be having the shaking problem because it's doing that and because it's shaking, so so the violin is shaking, then that could be a reason. Okay, the second reason is that the violin might not be supported against the body or the neck very well. So those of you who know me and have known me for a long time know that I don't use a shoulder rest, and that's absolutely fine. It doesn't cause me any problems, it doesn't cause any tension. I can still do vibrato quite nicely, as most of you had heard on many occasions. So it doesn't have any adverse effects, but what I tend to do is put the violin into my neck, into the middle of my neck. I've got a bit of a gap here, so what I do is just bring my shoulder up just a touch. Again, it doesn't cause any tension in my arm. I can still move my arm just like, and I can still move my wrist just like the next person can. And then I just bring my neck or my chin gently down on the violin. So it's not quite sort of clamping in, but the violin is nice and secure. So secure, in fact, that I can actually be completely hands-free and the violin is still where it needs to be. Now, if those of you who might just be holding the violin just on your shoulder, and you might have a bit of a gap between, because some people don't even, they really don't hold the violin correctly, and they have a bit of a gap between the chin and the shoulder rest, the chin rest that you've got on the violin. So of course, when you're trying to do the vibrato with that gap there, I can sort of do it, but it is shaking. So if I grip down, shoulder comes up a little bit, chin comes down, so I can do it. If I loosen that grip, if I take my shoulder down a little bit, which means really I'm holding the violin up with this arm. If I let go of this arm, then the violin's going to drop. So you can see the violin shaking quite a lot. Something that might help you guys, possible solution, is to use a shoulder rest. I don't use them, but I have used them when I was younger, but I'd say for 98% of my career I haven't used them. But you might just find that a shoulder rest just bridges the gap quite nicely. So you just sort of pop the violin on the shoulder, the chin sort of moves in the direction of the chin rest on the violin, and there we go, it's pretty much there, and that could do the job for you. So you could try a shoulder rest. My advice would be to just think very carefully with what shoulder rest you're going to get. This is a Wolf Forte Primo. I'll see if I can put a link in the description bar underneath for this actually, but this is one of the best shoulder rests that I've seen. Some of them, I'd say quite a lot of my students have these really flimsy shoulder rests that, I mean, halfway through they take the violin down because they've stopped playing and the shoulder rest just drops on the floor. This is the only one that hasn't, and like I say, I've had this for years, but I just haven't used it for years. It's got two rubber feet, as you can see, that just clamp nicely on the violin, and they do not fall off. These are not cheap, but they are for 3/4 and 4/4 violin. And just think of it as an investment. You buy one, you're never buying another one ever again. Moving on, it might be the stiffness and the gripping of your left hand. So because vibrato is not something that most people tend to do, you tend to kind of overemphasize, overgrip, you get a lot of stiffness and try and put in a lot more effort than need to, you know, when you're first starting out. So that could cause a problem, that you're trying to get everything to move all at once. You're trying to move the whole arm, you're trying to move the whole wrist, the fingers are moving all as one, they're not moving individually. It's just a roll on the finger, and then it's actually coming from, the movement's coming from the wrist, but I'm not actually moving the wrist. My fingers aren't, I'm not actually putting my finger on the violin and going like that. I'm rolling, the movement is coming from me rolling my fingernail on the string, and as a result of that, obviously it's coming from the wrist. You can do arm vibrato, and that's something that you do more when you're up here in the rafters and everything, but for now it's just called wrist vibrato. So it could just be that everything is just too tight and too stiff and too overgripped up here. The other thing might be, and it kind of goes hand in hand with number 2, in that you don't want to over tighten the collarbone and the jaw. So you don't want to be gripping so much that you're gripping everything here, and then it's causing a lot of tension in your arm here. When I grip here, it causes, you know, I can feel the tension in the top part of my arm here, which is ultimately going to cause tension up here as well. So that kind of goes part and parcel with it not almost being supported by the body. Okay, 4 possible solutions. You could try detaching the thumb from the neck of the violin. This is just a training exercise. So instead of having the thumb on the neck of the violin doing vibrato, you could actually take the thumb away. So what's going to happen is that the weight of your hand is going to push down, and you might just find it a little bit easier, because then you're going to have to make sure that you've got a good grip here, and you might find that it will help free up the hand so you're not touching anything, and like I say, the weight of the hand will just push everything down, as opposed to the thumb being a counterweight and sort of pushing it up, so to speak. So you could try that might help. The second thing is the old-fashioned one, putting the violin up against a wall. So be careful, folks, when you do this. You don't want to cause your violin any damage, but use a cloth or something. Just be very careful when you're doing this. Just use a cloth or a pad or something like that, so it's not going straight against a wall. Certainly don't put it against a brick wall, because you'll damage all the scroll and everything. Or, if you can, which would be an even better idea, is just to get somebody to hold the scroll of the violin for you whilst you do the vibrato. So that method may or may not help you, but it's worth a try. But it might just help you to realise, if somebody's holding it, it might help you to realise what exactly is you're making move too much or not enough, that kind of thing. Maybe you're over gripping, under gripping. Same with the hand. So it might help to isolate a few of the problems there. Your wrist just needs to be flexible, so the movement comes from the wrist. Don't centre the movements from the wrist, so don't put the second finger down thinking you're going to do vibrato and then make the wrist move, because you'll literally just make the wrist move. I always teach vibrato and that you're rolling the fingernail, but you need to obviously let the wrist be flexible, because the movement is actually coming from the wrist. It's like when you say goodbye to someone and you're waving, you're sort of tilting side by side from the wrist. It's not the whole arm. So just let the wrist be nice and flexible. Okay, and the 4th solution is just to relax and good old-fashioned practice, I'm afraid. So everything just needs to be relaxed. Not so relaxed that you're losing the grip on everything, and certainly not up here, but that's where your shoulder rest might come in. But just be relaxed in the fingers. I know that's easier said than done, but just being relaxed really will go a long way. And just take your time with it. Vibrato is not easy. It really isn't easy. It took me months to get the hang of vibrato, and I used to be able to get it bit by bit. So I remember learning how to do it in the first place, and I'd try and do vibrato whenever I could on any piece of music, but I'd get I kind of get waves of it that would sort of come and go. It's really hard for me to replicate that, how it was back then. But then all of a sudden it would just get longer and longer. You know, I would get it, and I could hear it almost there. I could hear it almost coming, and then eventually the penny dropped, it clicked, and then I can keep up the movement for as long as I like. So it really is just a case of practice. It will take what seems to be forever. And I know shaking of the violin is one of those things. Usually if the violin is shaking really badly, then it could just be that you're trying vibrato a little bit too soon. But you really need to have the hang of the basics first, and that normally takes about a year. And I know some of you might think, yeah, but I've only been playing for 2 months and I understand the basics. The brain might understand, but the body needs to be subconscious, and the basics really do need to sink in so that you're not having to worry about them at all. And not only that, it's time. You need time to practice the basics, which normally takes about a year, and time is something that you can't buy, not even with practice. It just literally just takes time. So there we go. So I hope that's helped you in solving your problem, why the violin is shaking while you're doing vibrato, and some solutions there. Thumbs up the video, like the video, write a comment underneath, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.